If you told me when Sonic Forces released back in 2017 that we'd get a game like Frontiers, I would have never believed you. And if you'd also told me that they've released updates for it across the span of a year that completely changed the game and added an entire game's worth of content to it, I would have wondered if Sega had sold Sonic to a different company. It has to be stressed, at one point they were going to charge you to play as Super Sonic. So, I mean, night and day, right? We're a long way from 2017 and Sega has more than made up for those blunders. I loved Sonic Frontiers when it first released, but my biggest criticism of the game regards the endgame. You could definitely tell where the team ran out of budget and development time, and this is no more apparent than in the final boss fights. The third update was announced alongside the first two with the promise of a new story and playable characters. Now, you already know I was hyped just based off of that, but could they really pull it off? In under a year, no less? Well, let's take a look. So, to access the new content, you'll need a completed save file. At the starting point of Veranos Island, there will be a giant ring portal. Walk in and a new cutscene will play out where Sage explains her new plan. Sonic and friends will now need to work together to gather the Chaos Emeralds and take on various trials to unlock a new power and defeat the end. Off the bat, I have to say that Ian Flynn knocked it out of the park again with the character writing. It all feels so natural when these characters talk to each other. You feel the history that Sonic has with his friends and even Eggman. And some of the references were genius. Standout for me was Knuckles. In the base game, he was already my favourite character from a writing perspective, and he's just been done more justice here. His interactions with Sonic always left me with a huge, stupid grin. As the story progresses, Sonic's friends struggle more and more to stave off their growing cyber corruption, while our hero proves himself to the spirits of the ancient warriors who try to stop the end. After that, he meets with the Master King Coco, who promises to unlock a new power for Sonic if he can overcome the toughest challenge yet. Doing so grants him a new powered-up super form. I'm going to call it Super Sonic 2 since it's strikingly similar to Super Saiyan 2, and is also literally called Super Sonic 2 in the game's files. You go to fight Supreme as you normally would in the base game, but the next battle is where things change drastically. Instead of Sage piloting the End and going to do a space shooter segment for the final fight, the End takes control of the Titan and uses it as a vessel to battle Sonic. Once Super Sonic 2 crushes Supreme, he powers up and taps into an even more powerful form. I'm going to call this new form Cyber Sonic, and he uses it to go and fly straight through the End. The ending up to this point plays out mostly the same as the base game, with the exception that Sage lives this time, and gets to go home with her father. Definitely a more wholesome ending, at least until Eggman inevitably tries to kill us again in the next game, but that's whatever. Also, I couldn't really think of anywhere else to slide this in, but the soundtrack slaps way too hard. You didn't need me to say that, you've been hearing it throughout this video, and you're going to continue to hear it throughout the rest of the video. Now onto the gameplay. A huge aspect of this update is that we could finally play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy for the first time since Sonic 06. 17 years ago! This was already a huge deal, and I'm happy to report that the characters are very fun to play as, for the most part. Let's talk Amy first. I'm going to make it clear right away that she's the most fun character to play as. Her higher jump and more acrobatic abilities make it extremely fun to find ways to platform around the world. Once you unlock her card spin boost, you can just zoom across the islands, Tokyo drifting to your heart's content. Admittedly, I was the most curious about how Amy would play going in, and was shocked at just how much fun she was to play compared to the other two. Speaking of which, let's talk about Knuckles. It pains me to say this, but he's easily the weakest of the three. Definitely not in terms of combat, but his gameplay overall just feels off. Now, it's not bad, but it feels like a nerfed version of his SA2 movement. The glide has an awkward start up to it that makes it more of a pain to use, especially during tight platforming segments, and the glide itself has a super wide turning arc. While that's more realistic, it doesn't feel as fun to control as the glide did in the adventure games. Still, I did enjoy going full Superman mode once I unlocked the infinite glide, and finally being able to play as my favourite character again in 3D was pretty awesome. Also shoutouts to this totally intentional reference to Sonic Boom. And finally we have Tails, who kinda sits somewhere in the middle in terms of my enjoyment of his playstyle. Flying around and attacking generally feels good, and I did enjoy the emphasis on more ranged attacks. It changed how I would approach certain situations in a way that sometimes I didn't even expect. It's not perfect, of course, as he lacks a homing attack which can make precision things like springs awkward and just generally struggles to fight enemies to begin with. But none of that matters because he has the Cyclone back from SA2 and can just fly around the island GTA cheat code style. So overall it's a bit of a mixed bag with the playable characters. On one hand, I'm extremely happy to be able to play as these guys again and think they adapted them into the open zone formula well enough. On the other hand, there's a definite lack of polish with certain things that I feel could be addressed in an additional patch or in the next game, but we'll talk more about that later. Of course, you alternate between the friends and Sonic himself. With Sonic, your task is to climb the 5 towers and take on their various trials. I've been seeing a lot of people online struggling with these, and not just the trials themselves, but even getting up to them. I didn't find any of them difficult at all, and I played on hard mode. The only exception to this was the 5th one, so let's just kind of go over them real quick. The first one is the Dragon Trial, which has you defeat some soldiers at level 1. You get your whole skill tree and plenty of time for it, so this one's a breeze. The second trial is the Snake Trial, which a lot of people struggled with apparently. You have about 2 minutes to take out these shells, but I did it first try with Psyloop and had absolutely no trouble. Trial 3 is the Tiger's Trial, and is also pretty easy. You can just parry the wolves as they come, and you have plenty of time to finish them off. The fourth trial is definitely the easiest. It's the Crane's Trial, and has you face off against a single ninja with enhanced speed. I took it out in under 20 seconds, even though the timer allowed for 10 minutes, so there you go. The final trial is the Master King Trial, and all the horror stories you've heard about it are true. You have 400 rings, or 400 seconds, to defeat the previous 3 titans. You have base stats, and the parry is now a perfect parry that only allows you to do it successfully in a 12-frame window. I'm pretty good at this game and often go back to the combat challenges. I know the ins and outs of the combat system and really enjoy it, but when I say that this is damn near impossible, I am not exaggerating. The problem with it is that the bosses weren't designed around such a strict system. 1/5 of a second is far too difficult to pull off, and even most games with a perfect parry system are more forgiving than this. So, like many others, I set the game down to easy mode where the parry can be held for 3 seconds, and I beat it within 4 attempts. I understand that this was a response to criticism about the base game being too easy, but this feels a little mean-spirited, and I hope that the patch increases the parry window to a second, or something that feels more doable at least. And no, don't hit me with a skill issue. I've been seeing this term thrown around a lot with this update to deflect genuine criticism, and it's a little bit tiring. There's a difference between a fair challenge, like the towers, they were tough and fun, and also, something made to just kick you in the balls and make you regret having ever picked up a controller in your life. But once you complete that trial, you can now access the final boss. We'll get to that in a minute though, because I haven't talked about some of the extra stuff. Around the island you'll find various Coco that either give Tails, Knuckles or Amy more XP to unlock skills, or uncover more of the map. These are the main incentives for platforming with these characters and acts as a good reward and progression system. You can also find stuff like Portal Gears and Knockout Coco, which will unlock cyberspace levels and tower challenges respectively. Let's talk about cyberspace. Holy shit. These are some of the most creative and gut-punchingly difficult stages Sonic Team has created in quite some time. Some of these stages are genuinely on par with the more difficult DLC stages of Sonic Unleashed, especially if you're crazy enough to go for 100%. I was crazy enough to go for 100%. It took me a whopping 4 hours to complete all 9 levels with all challenges done and S ranks. These stages have some very inventive ideas in them, such as the rocket boost mechanic, the rev mechanic in that one level, and racing against the Tails Ghost, who absolutely cheats with some heavy rubber banding. All the while, the level design encourages the use of the spin dash and deceleration options added back in Update 2, with very little dash pads or on-rail segments. They really opened up the design of these stages, which makes them super fun to go through by just flying off ramps and really using the platforms to your advantage. All stages will have certain objectives to complete, but these are the ones you'll find across all 9 levels. Rescue the animals and finish the stage, collect the numbered rings, collect the silver moon rings, beat the hologram Tails to the goal, clear the stage without stepping on invisible mines, or find the hidden goal. These are a lot easier said than done, but if you want to see the full extent of it, I have a stream VOD up for you to watch if you enjoy seeing torture. In fact, I have a whole playthrough of the update as a whole, and an entire series where I played every mainline Sonic game, so go check those out and follow us on Twitch if you want to be part of the chaos. You can also be in chat with these folks here. We're trying to hit 50 followers by year's end, so help your boy out. Anyway, shameless plug aside, let's finally talk about the ending to this update, and guys, this one's going to be hefty. So, as mentioned before, you can proceed to the final fight after beating the 5th trial, but you can also continue to explore the island with any of the 4 playable characters if you like. A cutscene will play where Sonic's friends and Eggman will show up with the emeralds, Sonic powers up and goes to fight Supreme. The fight plays out exactly the same as the base game, so nothing to add there. The difference comes in with the final confrontation. The N uses a strange cable to take control of the Titan and the true final fight begins. Right away I have to say, this is not a good fight. Don't get me wrong, the spectacle, animations, music and cutscenes are absolutely peak fiction, but playing it? I'm sorry, but there's just far too much jankiness in this fight for me to really say it's any good. First of all, you can't properly damage the Titan unless you remove the plug connected to it, otherwise it will just keep healing. The way you remove it is by hitting its face, then dodging to either side to reach the cable and damage the plug to remove it. The game makes absolutely no effort to telegraph or even explain this mechanic, so I would not have figured it out if it wasn't for my chat helping me. Granted, they also seemed a little confused on how it actually works as well, so again, this would be fixed with just better telegraphing, honestly. Maybe use the hidden mode, the plug exposes itself and becomes available to target? I feel like this would have worked better instead of this random dodging mechanic that's never explained. And then there's the camera. Holy fuck, the camera. What did they do? It's abysmally bad, because most of the damn fight, all I could see was trees. Just trees as far as I could see. And if not for that, the camera was just too close for me to see any of the projectiles it likes to spam at you, meaning I was unable to parry them away. It's baffling to me just how hard they dropped the ball on this one when all the other fights were so fun. Even the original Supreme fight feels better because at least I can actually see what's happening. Now, I definitely prefer this over the original final boss, but only just barely. I was honestly let down by this and hope that once again a patch can solve the issues here. It really just does come down to a lack of polish. Which brings me to my final point. I really love everything that the Final Horizon update brings to the table. Being able to play as Sonic's friends again has been something sorely missing for such a long time, and it's genuinely awesome to be able to play as them again. I just wish you could select them to play on other islands or possibly even cyberspace, and also be able to use them in their non-cyber ghosty forms. I also love the new challenges they added. They're legitimately tough and I enjoyed the feeling of satisfaction I got when completing it all. The story content was genuinely top notch with some great character writing, interactions and revelations about the game's story that answered a lot of our most burning questions. But between the final boss being as janky as it is and just a general lack of polish in some areas shows that this might have needed more time. A lot of us, including myself, expected this update to drop around the game's anniversary, and I think that would have benefited them more. They would have had more time to polish and refine certain gameplay mechanics, and they probably would have had a bigger jump in overall holiday time sales if they had new features to go along with it. That would have been a win-win for everyone. Sure, we'd have to wait longer, but as long as it results in more quality content, I don't mind, and you guys shouldn't either. Patience is always rewarded. But as I've said throughout this review, I think a patch is needed to remedy some of the issues I've mentioned. Just one more update to fix some of these issues would really boost this update and the game as a whole in my personal rankings. I'm sure it would for a lot of other people too. The team seems incredibly passionate, and Morio Kishimoto himself has seen tweets about the issues found with this update, so I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we get another smaller update that just consists of fixes. I have complete faith in Sonic Team to make this game the best it can be, and I'm extremely excited to see what they do for the next one. I'm not giving it a score since slapping numbers on things doesn't really mean much. What I can say is that Sonic Frontiers as a whole was an A-tier game to me before, and it still is now. The stuff they've added is great, but it just doesn't make it to S-tier quite yet. But we'll see if that changes. Well, that was quite an undertaking for me. I hope you enjoyed the review, and let me know what you think below. Of course, remember to keep it civil and respectful no matter what your opinion is. If you want to see more stuff like this, also let me know. And since I'm studying at uni, I may not have enough time to stream, so I've thought about making more edited videos like this that I can do at my own pace. So let me know what you want to see me cover, Sonic or otherwise, and just drop it below, honestly. Comment what you want to see, and we can do reviews or retrospectives or whatever you guys want to see. It's just whatever sounds good for that day. But that's going to be all from me for today, so thank you all for watching. Catch you later, and let's get a thank you Sonic Team for that one. Goodbye everybody.